Goodness. Welcome, Shuji.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, Sam.
Oh, Shuji, are you muted?
No, I'm talking. I'm unmuted on this side. So can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes?
Hey.
Okay. Good morning. I realize every time I give a Zoom Dharma talk, I always start out with a weather report. It's been windy here in Kansas, and they like to burn fields, and which means a lot of smoke, which for me, my allergies are acting up. But spring has come, and it's so nice. I look at my windows because that's what I'm going to talk about. It's so nice to sleep with my windows open and wake up to bird song. I really wish I could have been there in person with you this weekend, but as it happened, I'm very glad the Shishin was canceled because about a week and a half ago, I had knee surgery. And when the doctor said in a few days, you'll be good as new, I took her for her word, and I am in so much pain now that I can't believe it. No way could I have driven 3 hours, let alone sit for 3 days. But knees will heal, so I know I'll be there shortly.
Shall we open with the opening chant here?
Okay. Blah, 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 blah.
Thank you. Call and response. The Dharma is vast and subtle.
The Dharma
is vast and subtle. We now have a chance to see this.
We now have a chance to see this.
Study this and practice this.
Study this and practice this.
May we realize this true meaning.
May we realize this true meaning.
Thank you, Shuji.
Okay. Thanks for interrupting me, George.
Yeah, that's my job.
This last week, I spoke with the Interfaith Book Group, and they wanted me to come speak on the chapter on Buddhism. It was written by a religious philosophy academician. And I read the chapter on the book about Buddhism, and I thought, wow, is that how non-Buddhists see us? I did not agree with everything he said, in case you can't tell by my introduction there. But I used to speak a lot with to schools, to other groups. I spoke to a Rotary Club once, all sorts of different non-Buddhist people about Buddhism. And it's interesting to see how, that's Layla. Pamela just got home, so she's all excited. It's interesting to see how non-Buddhists see how I perceive as Buddhist to be. And I thought, is this somehow how we see ourselves? How we see ourselves and how non-Buddhists see us, I think, are so closely entwined with each other. And I thought of all the Zen stories that's out there. And the things when people tell me, my pet peeve, oh, you're so Zen. And when people say that, the first thing I want to say is, I'm going to quote a Zen master. I don't have any good students anymore because I can't hit them with my slippers. And people look at me like, wow, that's not Zen at all. And it's like, oh, don't tell me what Zen is. And I thought a lot of what people think about Zen is the stories of Zen, Buddha stories. So I pulled out my favorite book, the Lotus Sutra. And this is my favorite part of the Lotus Sutra book, the stories of Lotus Sutra. Someone suggested I buy this book, and I said, I do not need Lotus Light. Look how many bookmarks I have in this book. I love this book. So much for I am so cool, I don't need the condensed version. That is great. If you've never studied the Lotus Sutra, read that book. The Lotus Sutra has a tendency to be a little, show of hands, how many of you read the Lotus Sutra? Okay. There are times when I would have to force I saw one hand in Zoom. There were times when I had to force myself to read these page upon page upon page of blah, 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 because I'd tell myself, if this has been handed down for 2,600 years, I have to read it. The stories, Lotus Sutra stories by Jean Reeves, you don't have to force yourself to go through all that blah, blah, blah. I am going to talk about a chapter 3 of the Lotus Sutra, and it's just called a parable. It's known as the parable of the burning house. And if you've ever read the Lotus Sutra, it says everything twice, first in verse and then in prose. And the Lotus Sutra says if you memorize it, you will be enlightened, guaranteed enlightenment. So, and I thought, I'm not sure if enlightenment is worth all that memorization. That's not my path to enlightenment. But it's fluffy in language. And I'm trying to condense it, and I just can't do anything. And I try to talk about it, paraphrase it. And I'm going to read to you about the house, the title house of the parable of burning house. Suppose there was an affluent man who had a large house. This house is very old, on the verge of collapsing. The halls were extremely dangerous. The pillar bases were rotten. The beams and framework dangerously tilted, and the stairways were falling apart. The fences and walls were cracked. The plaster was peeling off. The thatched roof was falling down. The whole place was covered in filth. 500 people lived there. And moving around helter-skelter were kites, owls, hawks, eagles, magpies, doves, pigeons, lizards, snakes, vipers, scorpions, centipedes, millipedes, newts, magnapods, ferrets, badgers, mice, rats, and other harmful creatures. Blah, blah, blah. There are all kinds of bugs that had gathered there. There were foxes, wolves, vermin, devouring and trampling and gnawing on corpses, scattering bones and flesh about. A pack of dogs, forcing each other out of the way, rushed to the spot, frightened and exhausted from hunger. Biting, snarling, barking, and the end with the house was terrifying. That is Lotus Sutra. Yes, the house sounded absolutely terrible. It's not only the house is falling down, but it's not a place I would like to hang out. Typical Lotus Sutra, it makes it the worst house you could possibly think of. A little overdone, but it's trying to make a point. This is not a house you want to ever be in. And then the father comes home. The father was traveling. The father is also called the affluent man, and the householder. And as soon as the Buddha starts talking about the householder, he's talking about you guys. The Zen practitioners who are living in the real world. So, the house catches on fire, and it's not just a house on fire. It is the Lotus Sutra house on fire. The hungry ghost with hair on fire, ravenous, thirsty, suffering from the heat, frantically scurried about. In this way, the house was extremely terrifying, with poison and fire, disasters of more than one. And the householder, who was standing outside the entrance, heard someone say, "Hey, just a minute ago, I saw your kids go in there." Hearing this, the affluent man was startled. I think startled, putting it mildly. If my kids were in that house, I would be more than startled. So the affluent man runs in to save his kids. And the story goes that the kids were so involved playing their games, they didn't notice the house was on fire, nor did they hear their father saying, "Get out of the house, get out of the house." When my son was 10, he disappeared in Shopko. I could not find him. I was frantic. We called security. We were paging for him. A bunch of people were looking for him. And finally, somebody found him in the computer department playing games. My first reaction was absolutely furious. We were this close to calling the police. They had locked the doors so people couldn't get out without being searched to make sure they didn't have a 10-year-old son. He was just sitting there playing whatever game was popular in 1994 that they were trying to sell. It's like, oh. And I thought, when I read this, I thought, yes, that is Ben and Shopko playing with the games. As the Lotus Sutra put it, but the children were ignorant and would not listen to their father's warning. They were so attached to their games, they kept right on playing. Thus, the affluent man thought, my children doing this is increasing my distress. And I thought, that's putting it mildly. For some things that are so overdone in the Lotus Sutra, to say that watching his children play games in a burning house increased his distress, I thought was putting it fairly mildly. So he decided to tell his kids by using skillful means. He said, hey, I got some new toys for you outside. I brought some fine carts for you. An ox cart, a deer cart, and a sheep cart. And the kids go, so he goes, oh, children, come out of the house and play. Well, hearing this, the kids immediately went outside to look at the carts. Ooh, but there were no carts. The father lied to them to get them out of the house. And then the father made it up and gave them wonderful carts that were real and exactly what they wanted and what they needed. But when the children came out, another wonderful Lotus Sutra quote, now I am happy. It is extremely difficult to raise these children. Foolish and ignorant, they're entitled, they entered a dangerous house full of various poisonous insects, terrifying ogres from mountains and valleys, and raging fire that broke out in all directions. In spite of this, these children were attached to playing their games, and by causing them to escape from disaster, I have saved them. Therefore, my people, I now feel at ease. There were no carts. The father lied. And the parable went on, and everybody turned out happy ever after. This is a story told by the Buddha. And because it's told by the Buddha, we know it's not about children, a house, and carts. Everything in there has has symbolic meaning. And I'm not going to go into the goat, the oxen, and the sheep, but there's huge things written on just what it means to offer those carts and what it means to offer carts. And it's something that you can study the Lotus Sutra your whole life and not get to the bottom of all these meanings. But what I'm going to talk about is how we sit in our burning houses. And sometimes we don't realize it's time to leave. One more thing I'm going to say about the sutra itself is a lot of commentary you'll read about this is, did the Buddha tell you it's okay to lie? And it's all about skillful means. And I'm going to get on my skillful means soapbox. Skillful means have been so abused by bad teachers. And they would say horrible things to people, do bad things, and say, I'm using skillful means. So anytime you use skillful means to justify what you do, I will be there saying, but are you still being kind? So, and anytime you hear somebody say, oh, this is skillful means, if they're not pulling you out of the house, out of a burning house, they can just use kind words. And sometimes kind words is what you need to get out of that burning house. I'm doing a Jukai ceremony for my online group in Grand Rapids in a couple weeks. And this ceremony is kind of bestowing the precepts where anybody who has a Rakusu understands the precept ceremony. But you promise to follow the precepts. And it's like, no, we can't follow the precepts, but we try. But the crust of it is the 4 Bodhisattva vows. Beings are numberless, I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible, I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless, I vow to enter them. And the one that, if I'm in a hurry and I can only say one, Buddha's way is unsurpassable, I vow to realize it. We should speak them often. And we may have to break a precept sometime, but as long as we are doing the Buddha's way, or we're realizing the Buddha's way, sometimes you got to break a precept. The burning houses we sit in, they could be bad marriages, awful jobs, sticking to a spiritual practice when we should be changing, ignoring that illness. Yeah, I've been coughing now for 6 months, but I'm sure it'll go away. Went to a priest training group in 2016, 2014, I forget which trip it was. And there was a guy that was coughing the whole trip, and the leader of it used to be a physician, and she said, you need to go to a doctor. As soon as this training's over, go to your doctor right now. He had lung cancer and he was dead in 6 months. Yeah, I've had this cough for a while. I thought it was allergies. Burning house. Don't sit in your cough. My knee, which I'm having issues with, that should have been 2 days to take care of. It's been a week and I still can hardly walk on it. If I would have went and had it taken care of in December, instead of thinking, oh, I'm sure it's not that bad, instead of April, I'd probably have it probably would have healed much better. Instead, I went to Europe to see my son and we hiked around for 3 weeks. And she got in and she goes, wow, it's a lot worse than I thought it was. Wouldn't it be great to have a true Buddha walk in, robes, shining hair? One of the things it talks about in Lotus Sutra is the light shining out of his eyes. Walk up to you and say, Shuji, go take care of your knee right now. Okay. It's not always that clear. It's not always that clear. We can look at our lives, look at our burning house, and it doesn't have to be a burning house, just with a couple of those things, with insects and vermin running around your house, and say, let's clean this up. One of my first teachers, Nonan, always, first lesson and always a lesson from him was, pay attention, your life depends on it. And the first time he told me that, probably in 2002, I rolled my eyes at him and said, like, don't be so over dramatic. And knowing him, I'm just amazed he did not say anything about that eye roll. But maybe that's why he kept telling me that over and over. And still, every time I'm in my car and I pick up the phone and read a text, I can hear Nonan say, pay attention, your life depends on it. Knowing if I crash my car, I'll have to go say, Nonan, you were right. Paying attention, your life depends on it. And a lot of spiritual practices have the same idea. Get out of the burning house. I especially think of the Navajo, the Hopi, that have the coyote, the trickster. Pay attention, get out of the house, or the trickster will come and trick you out of the house. And the trickster is not always fun. And the Kali, the Hindu Kali, she's the destroyer. And if the trickster doesn't get you out, the destroyer will come and she will destroy everything around you so you can finally get out of the house. And I think the important stuff is go back to our vows. Beings are numberless. I vow to save them. And we have to start with ourselves. Get ourselves out of that burning house, or get ourselves out of the uncomfortable house, our dukkha house. Remembering that dukkha is, the direct translation is a wobbly wheel in a cart. Let's get out and fix the wheel before we're driving too fast in our cart and the wheel falls off and we have a big accident. That's what this parable is about. I was listening to the radio a while ago, and a woman told a story about having a cavity in her tooth. She went and had it fixed, and then she had to come back for a follow-up appointment. And the assistant said, "Oh, we don't have an appointment for you." Luckily, the dentist walked out and said, "Oh, you're alive." And she said, "Yeah." He said, "Oh, I called your number, and whoever answered said she died. And I'm so glad you're alive. We'll squeeze you in." You know, the dentist was so happy to see her because he had thought she died. And the woman said the backstory was she was thinking of committing suicide, and to walk in and see the dentist so alive that she didn't. She printed out his picture and carries it in her wallet just because somebody was happy I didn't kill myself. Even if it's just a dentist. Dentist had no idea the difference the dentist made in that woman's life, unless if the dentist happened to listen to the same thing I did on the radio. We walk around the world pulling people from their burning houses, and we don't even know it. If you live by your vows, you'll be pulling people out of burning houses, including yourself. I vow to realize the Buddha way. What does that say? Be kind, open your heart, and keep your ego out of the story. That's my list for rescuing people, including yourself. Be kind to yourself, open your heart to yourself, and keep my ego out of my story. I have a poem. It's a little long. I've gone on blah, 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 but I'm going to read it anyway because I think it's beautiful. And it talks about how to get out of the way to do something wonderful. To Paint a Portrait of a Bird by Jacques Prévert. I don't know how to, it's French. P-R-E-V-E-R-T. Prévert, I don't know. Pervert, I don't know. By Jacques. To paint a portrait of a bird, first paint a cage with an open door, then paint something pretty, something simple, something beautiful, something useful for the bird. Then place the canvas against a tree, in a garden, in a wood, or in a forest. Hide yourself behind a tree, in a garden, in a wood, without speaking, without moving. Sometimes a bird will arrive soon, but it could easily take many years for it to decide, wait, If necessary, wait for years. The rapidity or slowness of the arrival of the bird has no connection to the success of painting. When the bird arrives, if it arrives, observe the most profound silence and wait until the bird enters the cage. When it has entered, gently close the door with the brush, then erase one by one all of the bars, while being careful not to touch the feathers of the bird. Then make a portrait of the tree, choosing the most beautiful of its branches for the bird, and paint the green foliage and the freshness of the wind, the dust and the sun, and the noise of the creatures of the grass and the heat of the summer, and then wait for the bird to decide to sing. If the bird does not sing, it's a bad sign, a sign that the painting was not good. But if the bird does sing, it's a good sign. Then you can sing. Then you gently pull out one of the feathers of the bird and sign your name in the corner of the painting. I love that in the true Buddhist manner, how to paint a bird. How to get somebody to leave their burning house. How to get yourself to leave a burning house. Just be and live your vows. And pay attention, your life depends on it. That's all. Any questions, comments, arguments?
Anyone have any questions for Shuji?
I think it's interesting to think of the burning house on a lot of different levels. And I think you brought us down to a personal level. It's very easy to think of, the whole world as a burning house these days. And, it's a little harder to figure out skillful means for getting somebody out of the burning house, the terrifying place.
Yeah. And when you don't see an outside to the burning house, where do you go when the whole world is burning? That really has to come down to us. Yeah. And I love the Lotus Sutra parables because you can read one today and read the same one next year, and then read it again 5 years from now, and you'll see such different things in it. Such different, it's so many layers, and they're so useful.
Well, we're all going to go out and read the Lotus Sutra now.
If you want to read the whole Lotus Sutra, I'll say good luck. But this story, the Lotus Sutra, is really nice. There's some free PDFs online. So you can get the Lotus Sutra free online, and a few of them are pretty good. So.
I have a question.
We have a question.
Yes.
So, to clarify on the first moral of the burning house story, you said some people were thinking, wait, does the Buddha say lying is okay if it has good outcomes? Could you clarify on that? Did you say yes, the Buddha thinks that?
If you Google the burning house, you'll see a lot of people arguing about the Buddha's saying it's okay to lie. There's a few times in the Lotus Sutra where the Buddha does say things that aren't true, such as, come outside, the house is burning, you guys got to get out. And that is interpreted as the Buddha saying it's okay to lie. And there's a lot of intellectual discussion about that. And my thing is like, you know, sometimes you have to lie. Sometimes you have to steal in order to keep your precepts. The dog that was barking, Layla, she's alive today because somebody broke the precept, do not steal. A neighbor saw this dog, she was abused, she got pregnant on her first heat, and the neighbor said, no way, I'm going to let them do that to other dogs. Middle of the night, he went, she was chained up outside. She had never been off her 4-foot chain. That makes my heart hurt. And she was not attended to well. They took her to a rescue and she was almost starving to death. She was on the verge of death. So by breaking the precept of do not steal, the guy saved 12 beings because she had 11 pups. Should he have said, oh, I can't go take that dog and let her die? Of course not. He had reported them to animal control. They came out. She had food and water. There's nothing they could do. So he took it upon himself to break a precept, walk over there and steal his neighbor's dog. When I tell you that story, am I telling you it's okay to steal? Maybe, depending how you hear it. One of Nonan's first dogs he got by, it was a police officer, went and stole a dog. And as he left, the police officer was shooting at him. It's like, I can just see Nonan carrying a big German Shepherd being shot at, jumping in his little VW bug and driving away. Was it wrong to steal a dog? Hopefully, if you see your neighbor's dog starving to death, you will go and take it. Knowing that sometimes you have to break one precept to keep the rest of them. And that's where skillful means comes in. That's where going to your best friend who is so excited about a new relationship he or she are in. Oh, I finally found my soulmate, and you look and say, oh boy, this is not good. How can you keep your friendship, fine wine, and help open their eyes to see that this person is not good for them? And that is truly skillful means. Was visiting my son. Hope he doesn't listen to my Dharma talks. Well, if he does, he does. He feeds his little 18-month-old so much sugar, and it's just like, oh, don't do that. So skillful means, Mom, do you think she really needs more chocolate today? You know, how can I say, and that's a little thing. How can I say you're giving your kid too much sugar without harming family relations? Take skillful means. So, you know, I said 2 or 3 little things, and they did quit feeding her so much sugar. And one was just, boy, whenever she has sugar, you notice how she has meltdowns right afterwards? You know? Got an eye roll from my daughter-in-law, and Ben looked at me like, yeah, I do notice that. So, skillful means. Ooh, we use those all the time. but we can't abuse them. And we all can look at our lives and know when somebody has said something to us under the guise of being kind that was very unkind and hurt and didn't do what they wanted it to do. Did that answer your question? Boy, that was a long answer, long rambling answer.
Yeah.
Y'all still remember what the question was?
You said remind you what the question was?
I said, I remember what the question was, but I was wondering if everybody else had forgotten the question.
May I respond? I'm unsure how much time.
Yes, you may.
Okay. So my interpretation of the do not steal the dog story, I'm unsure if beings can own other beings, and thus liberating the dog from its leash may not be stealing. In fact, the other person who is abusing the dog may have stolen the dog's life and well-being. That's how I interpret that.
That's a really, I want to say deep interpretation. You're taking it one layer deeper. Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you come and take my dogs, they're really not your dogs. I will be Mama Bear after you.
I won't do that, don't worry.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I say skillful means you have to be skillful about it. I think it was Zen at War talks about how Zen monks became kamikaze pilots and were killing people in war because if there is no self, there's no me, there's no you. So if I go kill you, I'm not killing anyone. No one is killing anyone. That's kind of misusing that concept. So like everything, pay attention. Buddha is not one of easy answers, but I do like your interpretation of it. I may borrow it.
Thank you. And
I could do it by name, or I could say some guy, I don't know who he was, from Nebraska Zen Center added this to it because I use that example a lot.
And a second follow-up question, I'll admit this is from my lack of understanding of the theology of Buddhism, but is the Buddha's words seem to be infallible?
Buddha would say no. I'm positive Buddha would say no.
Okay.
And yeah, when he died, he said, let the teachings be a light unto yourself. And that did not say what I said, just keep with it. Yeah. No teacher is infallible, and don't take anything I say as infallible.
Thank you.
If anybody else have any questions? Any comments?
Anybody from Zoom?
Silence.
I always give a good 5 seconds of silence before I cut people off, before I say, okay, goodbye. And that's my infallible rule. Because 5 seconds is just enough to make people feel a little uncomfortable with silence. But lets anybody who doesn't want to jump right in, gives them enough time that they can jump in. So.
Not to disappoint the rule, can I ask? Just, while we're passing rules here. So just wanted to check my own understanding. In the example of the burning house and in the example of the dog, both, we've come across this concept of right action, right?
Yes.
I guess my question is it just as simple as the ego being the main barrier between right and wrong action in these cases?
Oh, my first response, gut action, is it's not that answer would be, it's not that simple.
I had a
But I
feeling.
think about it and it's like, that might be true. I will say, don't make anything right and wrong too simple, because if you've ever read the Dharma, and I would advise against it because it's the most torturous book I've ever read. But the main thing I got out of it was everything has 3 aspects: positive, negative, and neutral. And I really work to find positive, negative, and neutral in everything that I respond to. And so it's like, is it right or is it wrong? There's everything is right, wrong, and neutral at the same time. And if you can wrap your head around that, you have just wrapped your head around one of the basic teachings of Dogen. That non-duality. And like Dogen says, as soon as you grab it, it's gone. So if I say, oh yes, I understand positive, negative, and neutral, and they can all live together in one happy family, my hands are empty again. But I have real issues with saying something is wrong and something is right. But on the surface, I will say, yes, lack of ego equals right, and ego equals wrong. But I know that if we stop and think about it, and if we discuss it for an hour, we will find times when that's not true.
Absolutely. I guess my question was more situational, right?
Oh. I'm going to say situational, it's the same thing. Taking the dog, I'm sure the owners of the dog are the people that pretended they were owners of the dog, were very hurt that little Princess Leia was gone. It's like, I think they had like a 9-year-old girl who used to beat her, because she's still terrified of that 8-9-year-old girl. Anytime we see her, she'll just run and hide. And I'm sure the 9-year-old girl that used to beat her went and said, Mommy, my doggy's gone. It's like, oh, that's too bad. We'll have to get you another one. Or whatever Mommy said, her daddy said. I'm sure there was hurt, and they probably would say, I can't believe somebody took my dog. How could they do that? So for the previous owners, the abusers of Layla, I'm sure they saw Layla's being taken as something very negative in their life. I would hope they had at least that much caring of their dog to feel like, I'm sad my dog was taken. Maybe they were glad to get rid of it. I don't know. But I hope that they were at least a little sad that their dog was taken. And I'm projecting my own feelings on complete strangers of 13 years ago. I feel like I totally didn't answer your question.
You did.
The question is, be careful about saying anything is right or wrong, because there's a little bit of good, bad, and neutral in everything.
But I guess maybe it's more a question of, rather than, is it all about the ego? Is it all about the absence of ego? I mean, to, in my mind, balance the right, the wrong, and the neutral, you've got to take yourself out of the equation on both.
Yes. Yeah. I would say that many Buddhist schools of thought would say it's all about the ego. And you think of anything that has hurt you or others, ego does seem to play such a major role in it.
I think that's helpful, like being Buddhism, we're very oriented around suffering and like the mechanics of suffering. And so when you talk about positive, negative, and neutral, I think that's really more helpful because then you can just think about the effects of your actions in terms of like harm reduction, like
Yeah,
going to cause the least amount of suffering and maybe even promote well-being.
yeah. I love the 3 peer precepts, and I especially like the third one. I live to benefit all beings. And I think if the whole world could live to benefit all beings, we would be in a very different world. To do that, you do have to drop your ego. You can't live in greed, anger, and delusion. Because how can I benefit even the beings I live in my own house with, people that I care for, if I have delusion or greed? You know, I made that chocolate cake for me. I can't believe you ate it all. Very simple, very superficial, but that's where suffering starts.
Any other questions, comments? Before we close, a few announcements. You want to make them or shall I?
The only announcement I have is that Pam is gonna make an announcement.
Well, we do have coming up in May, we have a special service for Remembrance Day. It's just prior to Memorial Day, and this is a day on which we take some time to think about people in our lives, loved ones and friends who have died. And that's a special ceremony to look forward to.
On the 22nd, yeah.
The 22nd of May, thank you. And also, I'd like to remind people that we do in June have another Intro to Zen class coming up on the 11th of June. So those of you who haven't gone through the Introduction to Zen, I recommend it for you. Also, I'd like to remind you that we do rely on donations, and the Dana Bowl is out there in the hallway as you leave. And in the entryway, there's also a sign-up sheet for those who want to receive the newsletter or want to be on our mailing list. You can sign up there, or you can go to the website and sign up for the newsletter as well. Seems like I had something else. Oh,
Pam,
yes.
yeah. I was going to say, we're also in the middle of a spring fundraiser. So if you could, just make sure you can go to the website in addition to regular membership donations.
Great, thank you, Vicki. Yeah, we are in the middle of a.
Why is that funny?
Because it just came out of nowhere.
Like God spoke.
Yeah.
Yeah. We are in the middle of a, rather enterprising fundraiser. So you'll be getting some more messages from Tara about that. Blame it on you. Exactly. We do have some new faces here today. I wanted to recognize, we have Kayla, and we have Randy, and what was your name? Ian. And I didn't get your name.
Cameron?
Cameron, you sent us an email, Creighton Prep, right?
Yeah.
Thanks for showing up. So welcome very much. We have to see that. Anybody else? Something I've forgotten? Okay. Closing chant.
Call response. The many beams are numberless, bowing to carry them across.
The many beings are numberless, bowing to carry them across.
Greed, anger, and ignorance rise endlessly, vowing to cut off the mind road.
Greed, anger, and ignorance rise endlessly, vowing to cut off the mind road.
Dharma gates are countless, Vowing to wake to them all.
Dharma gates are countless, vowing to wake to them all.
Buddha's way is all embracing, vowing to follow through.
Buddha's way is all embracing, vowing to follow through.
Thank you, Shuji.
Thank you, Shuji.
Hope you're feeling better.
Thank you. Can't wait to come visit Omaha one of these days soon.
Can't wait either, so. Thank you. We'll have tea and conversation as usual now.